Look, I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because what's happening right now in the banking system is something most people won't see coming until it's too late. And by then, their wealth will have evaporated. We're witnessing something that hasn't happened in over 50 years. Central banks around the world are buying gold at a pace we've never seen before in recorded history. Not just buying it casually. They're hoarding it like their lives depend on it. And here's what nobody's talking about. They know something you don't. The numbers are staggering. Central banks purchased over 1,300 tons of gold in recent quarters, the highest quarterly total ever recorded. Think about that for a second. These are the same institutions that spent decades telling you gold was a barbaric relic, that it had no place in a modern financial system. Now they're scrambling to accumulate as much as they possibly can. Why the sudden change of heart? Because the system is breaking. The very foundation of our monetary system, the thing that's held everything together since the early 70s, is cracking at the seams, and the people who run the system know it. Let me paint you a picture of what's really happening behind closed doors. Gold just surged past $3,500 per ounce, gaining 40% in a single year. That's not normal market behavior. That's panic buying. That's institutions positioning themselves for something catastrophic. You want to know what they're preparing for? They're preparing for the end of dollar dominance. The end of the system that's allowed America to print unlimited money and export inflation to the rest of the world. That party's over, and the hangover is going to be brutal. Here's what's driving this unprecedented move into gold. Political interference with the Federal Reserve has reached levels we haven't seen since the Fed was created. When politicians start meddling with central bank independence, that's not just a red flag. That's a 5-alarm fire. Because once the Fed loses its credibility, once markets stop believing in the institution's ability to control inflation and maintain stability, the entire house of cards comes tumbling down. And it's not just America. This is a global phenomenon. Countries around the world are looking at their dollar reserves and asking themselves a very uncomfortable question. What happens when the dollar isn't the world's reserve currency anymore? China's been asking that question for years. Russia's been asking it. Now even traditional U.S. allies are starting to whisper it in private meetings. And their answer? Gold. Physical gold. The one asset that can't be printed, can't be devalued by a keystroke, can't be frozen or sanctioned. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates what's happening. Back in the early 70s, President Nixon faced a crisis. Foreign governments were showing up at the Treasury's door with dollars, demanding the gold they were promised. The problem? There wasn't enough gold to go around. So Nixon did what politicians do best. He changed the rules. He closed the gold window, ended dollar convertibility, and ushered in the era of pure fiat currency. That decision created the system we live under today. A system where money is backed by nothing but faith in government. And for 50 years, that faith held. But faith is a fragile thing. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to restore. We're watching that faith crumble in real time. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. Geopolitical tensions are at their highest point in decades. Trade wars are escalating. The BRICS nations are actively working to create alternatives to dollar-based payment systems. De-dollarization isn't some conspiracy theory anymore. It's official policy for a growing number of countries. And every time another country announces they're reducing dollar reserves, every time another trade deal gets settled in yuan or rupees instead of dollars, gold goes up. Because gold is the ultimate vote of no confidence in fiat currency. Now here's where this gets personal for you. If you're sitting on retirement savings, if you've got money in the bank, if you're holding dollars and hoping everything works out, you need to understand something crucial. Your wealth is denominated in a currency that's losing its privileged status. When the dollar loses reserve currency status, and it's not a question of if, but when, the purchasing power of every dollar you own is going to crater. Your savings, your retirement accounts, your cash holdings, all of it will buy a fraction of what it buys today. The wealthy already know this. That's why family offices and high-net-worth individuals have been quietly moving into hard assets. They're not waiting for permission. They're not waiting for the mainstream media to tell them it's okay. They're acting now, while there's still time. Quick aside here, because this is important. If you're holding $100,000 or more in retirement accounts, there's a way to protect that wealth without triggering massive tax penalties. Gold IRAs allow you to move retirement funds into physical precious metals while maintaining the tax-advantaged status. I put together a comprehensive guide that walks through exactly how this works. You'll find it in the description below. It covers the mechanics, the custodians, the storage requirements, everything you need to know. Worth checking out if you're serious about protecting your retirement. Anyway, let's talk about what happens next, because the timeline on this is compressing faster than most people realize. The mechanics of what's coming are actually pretty straightforward once you understand them. The global financial system runs on confidence. Confidence that dollars will hold their value. Confidence that banks are solvent. Confidence that governments can manage their debt. Remove any one of those pillars and the whole structure becomes unstable. Right now, all three pillars are shaking. Government debt levels are at historic highs across the developed world. The U.S. national debt is approaching levels that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. And the interest payments on that debt, they're consuming an ever larger share of the federal budget. At some point, the math simply doesn't work anymore. When that point arrives, governments have three choices. They can default outright, which would destroy their credibility and access to credit markets. They can implement brutal austerity measures, which is political suicide. Or they can inflate the debt away by printing massive amounts of money. Guess which option they always choose? That's right. They print. They inflate. They devalue the currency and hope the public doesn't notice until it's too late. It's happened throughout history, from Weimar Germany to Zimbabwe to Venezuela. The playbook never changes, because politicians never change. And that's exactly what's setting up right now. The pressure to print is building. The debt needs to be serviced. Social programs need to be funded. Military spending continues to climb. Infrastructure is crumbling. The bills are coming due and there's only one way out. Massive monetary expansion. Inflation on a scale we haven't seen in generations. And the destruction of purchasing power for anyone holding fiat currency. Gold doesn't just protect against this scenario, it thrives in it. Because as paper currency loses value, hard assets become more valuable by comparison. It's not that gold is going up, it's that the currency is going down. Gold is simply maintaining its purchasing power while everything else collapses around it. Let me give you some historical context that should terrify you. In 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window, gold was trading at $35 per ounce. Today it's over $3,500. That's a 100-fold increase. But here's the thing, gold didn't really go up. The dollar went down, a 100-fold decrease in purchasing power over 50 years. And that was during the good times. That was when the dollar was still the undisputed reserve currency. That was before the debt spiraled completely out of control. That was before the political dysfunction reached current levels. What do you think happens when the system really breaks? The answer is playing out right now in the gold market. Institutional buyers aren't waiting to find out. They're positioning ahead of the crisis, not during it. Because once the crisis hits, once the public wakes up to what's happening, it'll be too late to get positioned at reasonable prices. Supply and demand dynamics in the physical gold market are already getting tight. The premium between paper gold and physical gold is widening. Delivery delays are increasing. Refineries are running at capacity. These are all signs of a market under stress, a market where demand is overwhelming supply. And we haven't even seen retail panic buying yet. We haven't seen the moment when average people realize their savings are at risk and rush to convert paper into metal. When that moment comes, and it's coming sooner than most people think, the price of gold is going to do things that seem impossible right now. Think about the psychology of what's happening. For decades, people have been conditioned to trust the system, trust the banks, trust the government, trust that everything will work out. That conditioning runs deep. It takes a lot to break through it. But once it breaks, once people lose faith in the institutions that are supposed to protect them, the pendulum swings hard in the other direction. Fear replaces complacency. Panic replaces trust. And everyone tries to get through the same narrow exit at the same time. We saw a preview of this during the financial crisis. Bank runs, credit freezes, institutions that seemed rock solid one day gone the next. Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Washington Mutual, giants of finance reduced to rubble in a matter of days. The difference this time? The central banks can't save the system by printing more money, because printing more money is what caused the problem in the first place. They've already used their ammunition. The interest rates are already at historic lows. The balance sheets are already bloated beyond recognition. There's no cavalry coming over the hill. This is why gold is moving the way it's moving. This is why central banks are buying at record pace. This is why the smart money is getting positioned now, not later. Let me walk you through what the next phase looks like because understanding the sequence of events is crucial to protecting yourself. First, we're going to see continued pressure on the banking system. Not necessarily dramatic failures, though those are possible. More likely, we'll see a slow erosion of confidence. Depositors moving money around, looking for safety. Banks tightening lending standards, credit becoming harder to access. Second, we're going to see governments respond with more stimulus, more spending, more printing. They'll call it economic support or infrastructure investment or whatever sounds good in a press release. But it's all the same thing, creating money out of thin air to paper over structural problems. Third, we're going to see inflation accelerate beyond what official statistics admit. Real inflation, the kind you feel at the grocery store and the gas pump, is going to make life increasingly difficult for anyone on a fixed income or holding cash. Fourth, we're going to see a flight to hard assets, real estate in certain markets, commodities, and especially precious metals. Gold and silver are going to become the safe havens of choice for anyone trying to preserve wealth. And finally, we're going to see a restructuring of the global monetary system. This is the big one. This is what all the central bank gold buying is really about. They're positioning for a world where the dollar is no longer king, where gold plays a much larger role in international settlements, where the rules of the game are fundamentally different. That restructuring is going to create winners and losers on a massive scale. The winners will be those who saw it coming and positioned accordingly. The losers will be those who trusted the system to protect them. Which side of that divide do you want to be on? Here's what most people don't understand about gold. It's not an investment in the traditional sense. You don't buy gold hoping it goes up so you can sell it for a profit. You buy gold as insurance against the system failing. You buy it as a store of value that transcends political borders and government policies. Gold has been money for 5,000 years. Every paper currency ever created has eventually gone to zero. Every single one. The dollar's turn is coming. The only question is whether you'll be prepared when it does. The evidence is overwhelming at this point. Record central bank buying, geopolitical instability, unsustainable debt levels, political interference with monetary policy, supply constraints in the physical market. All of these factors are converging at the same time. This isn't fear-mongering. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is reading the data and understanding what it means. The institutions that run the global financial system are telling you exactly what they think is coming. They're buying gold like there's no tomorrow because they believe there might not be a tomorrow for the current system. Are you listening? The window for action is closing. Not in years, not in months. We're talking about a compressed time frame where the opportunity to protect yourself at reasonable prices is rapidly disappearing. Every day that passes, every new round of central bank purchases, every geopolitical development that undermines dollar confidence, the price of protection goes up. Think about what you stand to lose if you do nothing. Your savings, your retirement, your financial security, everything you've worked for, potentially wiped out by monetary policy decisions made by people who don't care about your well-being. Now think about what you stand to preserve if you act. The purchasing power of your wealth, the ability to weather the coming storm, the peace of mind that comes from knowing you're protected regardless of what happens to the banking system or the dollar. The choice seems pretty clear when you frame it that way. I'm not telling you to panic. I'm not telling you to liquidate everything and buy gold bars. What I'm telling you is to take this seriously, to understand the magnitude of what's happening, to recognize that we're living through a historic shift in the global monetary system, and that shift is going to have profound consequences for anyone holding paper assets. The banks are preparing. The central banks are preparing. The wealthy are preparing. The only question is whether you're going to prepare or whether you're going to hope everything works out and trust the same institutions that created this mess to somehow fix it. History suggests that's not a winning strategy. Gold is hitting record highs for a reason. That reason is systemic instability. That reason is the erosion of confidence in fiat currency. That reason is the recognition that we're approaching the end of an era and the beginning of something very different. You can ignore these warning signs. You can tell yourself it'll all blow over. You can trust that the government and the Federal Reserve have everything under control. Or you can look at what the smart money is doing and follow their lead. They're buying gold. They're moving into hard assets. They're protecting themselves against the very real possibility that the system breaks down in a way that destroys paper wealth. The information is out there. The data is clear. The trend is unmistakable. What you do with that information is up to you. But understand this: once the crisis hits, once the public wakes up to what's happening, it'll be too late to get positioned. The prices will have already moved, the physical metal will be hard to find, the opportunity will have passed. Right now, you still have time. You still have the ability to protect yourself. You still have access to physical gold at prices that, while high by historical standards, are going to look cheap in retrospect. The banks are closing. Not literally, not yet. But the system they represent, the faith-based monetary system that's dominated for 50 years, that's closing. That chapter of history is ending. And what comes next is going to be very different from what came before. Gold is your hedge against that uncertainty. It's your insurance policy against systemic failure. It's your way of preserving wealth when paper assets are being destroyed by inflation and monetary mismanagement. The central banks know this. That's why they're buying at record pace. The question is whether you're going to figure it out in time, or whether you're going to learn this lesson the hard way, by watching your wealth evaporate while those who prepared maintain their purchasing power. The system shock is coming. The only question is whether you'll be ready when it arrives. The answer to that question will determine your financial future for decades to come. Choose wisely.